So the day is finally here, my friends. On the 11th of April 2022, the Federal Aviation Administration sent out a letter to Trevor informing him that his private pilot license had been emergency revoked. The reason for this is a flight that he did 5 months before, where he took his lovely old Taylor craft built in 1940 and he basically deliberately crashed it into a mountain range and a natural reserve in order to gather some cool video footage for his YouTube channel. When he put the video up on his YouTube channel in December, basically all of the aviation YouTubers out there and anyone who knew anything about aviation reacted really strongly to it. And I, among other YouTubers, made a video about it where we kind of looked at all of the strange things that was in that video, kind of indicating that this was likely a premeditated crash. Now, the FAA has clearly gone through the same video material with a fine-tooth comb. They have also been in contact and interviewed Trevor, but they clearly found that whatever explanation he had for this was not up to scratch. Now, the reasons that the FAA had for revoking his license were that he had attached multiple cameras to the aircraft, potentially showing intent. I mean, there's nothing criminal about putting cameras on your aircraft, providing that you do it safely. But the fact that he had done it on this particular flight and the amount of cameras he had been used was highly suspicious. They also reacted to the fact that he was wearing a sport parachute. That's not an emergency parachute, but an actual kind of skydiving rig, which is just really hard to wear inside of a general aviation aircraft, and there's no reason for doing that. The fact that he said that he was using it for his own protection was also highly suspicious. And then they mentioned the fact that Jacob cracked open his door before the moment when the engine supposedly failed. He made no attempt to contact air traffic control on the emergency frequency, and he made no attempt to restart the engine by increasing airflow over the propeller. And in fact, when we looked at the video, we saw that he was kind of doing the opposite. He was actually pulling back a little bit, looking like he wanted to get the speed back, potentially in order to get the propeller to stop for more cinematographic reasons. Then, it continues on the second page, he didn't look for anywhere safe to land. Right? Even though there were multiple areas within gliding distance. And this is also something we discussed about, you know, how you're supposed to handle yourself in case you do face an engine failure. Aviate, navigate, communicate, and do it in that order. None of that was done by Jacobs in that video. Then he jumped clear of the aircraft, holding a camera on a selfie stick, recording himself and the plane as he was doing so. Not really the way that you would normally react when you're faced with an emergency that you didn't expect. Then, after crashing, he made his way to the plane first in order to recover his cameras. Which also seems a little bit strange, especially since he was kind of indicating that he was out in the wilderness and had problems finding water. But also, the last thing that I want to mention here as well, which I did not mention in my original video, is that the FAA found that he recovered and disposed of the wreckage of the plane after this had happened. And this doesn't seem like something that you would do if you are out with honest intentions, okay? Apparently, he wasn't aware that he needed to report this crash to the authorities, but eventually he did so. But after he'd done so, he'd already removed the wreckage. We don't know exactly how that was done. There were some early reports of potentially him contracting a helicopter firm that went out and did it for him. But anyway, recovering and removing and then not showing the wreckage is going to remove any kind of proof there might be, which the NTSB might need in order to do a proper investigation of the crash if they would want to do that. So what will this actually mean for Trevor then? Well, the FAA can only really remove his license, his ability to work and to operate within the aviation industry. And they've said in the letter that he has lost his private pilot license for a minimum of a year. This doesn't mean that he automatically gets his private pilot license back after a year. He can reapply for it, and I have a suspicion that they're gonna go through some quite substantial revision before he's allowed to get his license back. He can also appeal this decision, as long as he does so within 10 days of receiving the letter. But he needs to immediately give up his license, and for every day that he's delaying that, he faces a fine of $1,644 per day. So that can amount to a lot of money unless he's quick with this. When it comes to his further legal exposure, I can't really talk too much about that because I'm not a legal expert. But he was on a podcast recently where he got a question about this stunt, and he said that he was not allowed to discuss it in any way, shape or form because his lawyers had told him not to. And that would indicate that he could potentially face other legal problems because of this. And that makes perfect sense to me, because obviously the FAA has now found that he did deliberately crash his aircraft in a natural reserve. And the FAA is actually stating that he operated his aircraft in a careless or reckless manner as to endanger the life or property of another. So I could see where other government entities might come in and charge him with potentially other crimes, or private persons out there who maybe own land within the natural reserve could do the same. So what do I think about this then? Well, I think that the FAA has taken a good decision here. I think that they moved exceptionally fast, given that this only happened about half a year ago, and normally these investigation takes much longer than that. But I think that they have recognized how important it is to send a message out that this type of behavior is not acceptable. The aviation industry is a serious industry. It's built on the premise of safety, and that everyone involved thinks about safety as their primary priority. And that's definitely not what Trevor Jacobs has done in this. On a slightly different note, which I talked about a little bit in my video about this when it happened, as an aviation content creator, you have to be aware of the kind of message that you're sending out to people, right? I am very aware that hundreds of thousands of people are going to see what I'm saying. So I have to make sure that whatever I'm saying or doing is well researched and that it gives a positive impact on my viewers. It has to be positive, constructive, and it has to forward safety. Now, Trevor Jacobs has basically done the complete opposite by this, right? By doing this, he's set a really bad example for anyone who's in pilot training, any general aviation pilots out there, and basically anyone from the general public who might get a complete wrong perception about what we're supposed to do as pilots in emergency situations. So, from that perspective, I feel really bad for all of the great aviation YouTubers out there who spend their days creating good, constructive, instructive content. Their life is going to likely become harder now because of his actions, because it's likely that the FAA is going to start scrutinizing YouTube videos from aviation YouTubers even more after a stunt like this. And that just makes me really, really sad, because I really enjoy watching some of these other YouTubers. Now, do I think that Trevor Jacobs should lose his license forever? No, I am principally against lifetime sentences. I do think that people have the ability to, mature, to get better, to change their ways. But I do really think that the FAA should take a really close look at any application that comes from Trevor Jacobs from now on before he's allowed to get close to any aircraft going forward. Now, check out this video next. I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's about why the nose wheel on the Airbus A320 keeps getting twisted the 90 degrees, and it's actually really interesting. Have an absolutely fantastic day, and if you want to support the work that I do, consider becoming part of my Patreon crew or get yourself some merch. Bye-bye.